Hello and welcome back to the channel, YouTube family. So we are here today to talk about Cuban coffee. Alright, now for today's video I did take some notes. Freddie, I'm watching you. Let's see about these notes. Note number 1. Do not try to record in the car at least until October. So yeah guys, I did take some notes today. We're going to talk about Cuban coffee, how to make it, what it's all about. Alright, to understand Cuban coffee, first let's talk a little bit about espresso. Okay, espresso is basically a method of brewing coffee. Now it's done in combination with a particular roast. Okay, the coffee roast for making espresso is a little bit dark. You know, you want something that is, I would say, from like a medium to a darker coffee. In a lot of places when you buy the espresso, coffee for espresso, when you buy the beans, it'll say on the bag or on the can or whatever, it'll say espresso. So it'll make it easier for you. But basically all it is just like a darker roast. Now, traditional espresso is very extremely concentrated, okay? It's not, people think Cuban coffee is just like regular espresso, but it's really not. Okay, like a traditional espresso, the ratio of coffee grounds to water is extremely concentrated. It's something like 1 to 1 or maybe 1 to 1.5, 1 to 2. Okay, that means 1 part ground coffee, okay, to 2 parts water, or 1 part water, 2 parts water, and it goes all the way up to about 4 parts water. Okay, beyond that, it's rare that people will make espresso that is diluted to that extent. Okay, so basically what this means is that if you have on your portafilter, okay, if you have 20 grams of ground coffee, you'll get 40 grams of water out. That's very traditional, very common. Okay, you could get 20 grams out, you can get 30 grams of water out, and anywhere in there. Okay, that's your basic espresso. Okay, now on Cuban coffee, and I did do a little bit of research, okay? I'm not just pulling one, I see you, okay? I did do a little bit of research. And in Cuban coffee is about twice as diluted as that, okay? Cuban coffee is more like a 1 to 6 ratio, 1 to 7, maybe even 1 to 8 ratio. Now, traditionally, if you go to your grandmama in Cuba and you ask her for some Cuban coffee, she's gonna make it in one of these things here. Now, I don't own one of those, so I can't show you making espresso in that, but I'm gonna make it pretty much the same way that they will make it if you go right down the street. Here in Miami, they're extremely common, they're everywhere. You just go to your corner cafeteria, you ask for Cuban coffee, and they're gonna make it in an espresso machine, okay? And they just dilute it more, okay? And I'm gonna show you. Okay, so when you order coffee anywhere in town, you know, basically they're gonna put it in one of these, okay? They're gonna dilute the coffee until this thing is basically filled almost all the way to the top. These things usually hold 6 ounces of fluid, okay, of water. So the portafilter that they use in any cafeteria in town is gonna be pretty much the same like anywhere in any espresso machine, okay? They hold somewhere between like 18 grams of ground coffee to maybe 20 grams of ground coffee. They just keep running it until they do it manually, they program the machine to give you like 6 ounces, okay? So they'll dilute that to this much, okay? So basically at the end of the day, when you get your Cuban coffee down the street here, anywhere, in any place, they're gonna give you something that's been diluted to probably about 7 to 1, at least like 6 to 1, 7 to 1, maybe even 8 to 1, and that's your Cuban coffee, okay? It's an espresso, but diluted to that extent. So if grandmama makes it in one of these coffee makers, usually these coffee makers will dilute the coffee to that extent, okay? It'll be like anywhere from, depending on the make and model and how big and a few factors, okay? It'll end up being something like 1 to 6 or maybe even 1 to 9, okay, ratio of coffee grounds to water. So that's Cuban coffee, okay? But what makes Cuban coffee, all right, is basically the lethal dose that you get of caffeine and sugar. Sugar in Cuban coffee is not an option, okay? This is not an option, it's a standard feature. You're gonna get some, and you're gonna get a lot of it. Usually in one of these things, they'll put anywhere from like 3 teaspoons to 4 teaspoons of sugar, okay? And that's your Cuban coffee. It's a lethal dose, man, a lethal dose of caffeine and sugar. So let's talk about the ways of ordering Cuban coffee. If you go to a cafeteria here in town and you want to get your Cuban coffee fix, there's several ways you can order it. There's 4 basic ways, okay? First of all, you can order a cafecito. Cafecito, you'll get one of these. Now, if you're lucky, depending on the cafeteria, you might get one of these, okay? These things hold about 2 ounces, okay? So that's your basic cafecito. It's about 2 ounces of espresso, but made in the Cuban way, which is a little bit more diluted, which they'll get out of one of these things, okay? And it'll have a lethal dose of sugar. Now, if you don't want sugar, you got to make sure that you say, hey, no sugar, okay? And you gotta watch them. You gotta watch. They won't understand. They won't understand. They'll be like, well, what does this guy mean? Where does this guy come from? Like, what does he mean, no sugar? That can't be. They'll still try to put it. I mean, I'm telling you, the combination, it's a must. Okay, the Cuban style of coffee, the lethal dose of sugar, you gotta get it. Okay, so that's your basic cafecito. Okay, you get the cafecito, that's what it is. Now, okay, you can also order a cortadito. Cortadito, you'll still probably get one of these, okay? And it'll be filled to about halfway with coffee, somewhere in there, and then the other way with milk, okay? And that's a cortadito, okay? Now, you can also get café con leche. Café con leche you'll get in a bigger cup, usually about 8 ounces, and it'll still have your, like, one of these in with the milk, and you end up with your basic, like, I guess like a latte, a café con leche, that's what it is coffee and milk. And the other way of getting it is the colada, okay? So the colada, they'll make this whole thing and they just hand it over to you. They'll pour it in something, and usually they give you a bunch of the little small cups, and it's something that you share with friends. Do not try to have the colada by yourself, okay? This is not. If you have the colada by yourself, man, call 911. You're gonna be in trouble. Call 911 right away. The colada is a serious thing, man. If you manage to live through a colada, you'll be able to see the future. So yeah, guys, that's the basic ways of ordering a Cuban coffee if you go to any coffee shop or restaurant around here in town in Miami, and probably everywhere else. Now, the lethal combination of sugar and caffeine, now the sugar, in some places it might be, maybe it's not a given, okay? Like if you order a cafecito in a Cuban restaurant in Oklahoma or something, maybe they won't put the sugar because they know their audience, okay? But here in Miami, the sugar, you're gonna get it. So you gotta watch them, okay? It's like you go to the car dealership, you get your car, it's gonna have wheels. I mean, I don't know what kind. It might not be no 20s, I don't know what you're gonna get, but you get wheels. It says like a standard feature. All right, so that's your basic Cuban coffee. Let's get in the kitchen, let's make some Cuban coffee the way they would make it right down the street. All right, now guys, so this espresso machine here is the one we're gonna be using to make our Cuban coffee. As you could see, you see this bag of coffee here from Macondo. That's a local roasters here in town. By the way, I have a video on this place. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. They make like one of the best sandwiches, maybe the best sandwich in town. Okay, so these people are awesome. Anyway, as you could see, they just put espresso roast. Okay, it's just a dark roast. That's basically all it is, so that you can extract all that flavor and all that coffee goodness with a small amount of liquid. Okay, and in a short time. Now I have a tutorial on how to use this machine and basically how to pull a great espresso shot. It's already on my channel. Check it out. I'll put a picture of the thumbnail right here. Okay, so on that video, I show you guys how to use the brew infuser. It's the same thing like the Barista Express. They're like the same machine. And I'm sure that by watching this video, it would help you with any of the brew machines, okay? Because they all use kind of like the same portafilter and a lot of the same techniques to pull a shot. So basically, we're gonna be making Cuban coffee in this. So all I'm gonna do is just dilute it extra, okay? So I'm just gonna run it twice. And yes, I know the purists will say like, oh, you'll over extract and you'll get some crazy flavors. And look, it's not that serious, all right? Let's just make our Cuban coffee, man. And by the end of the day, we're gonna put so much sugar in this thing, it's not even gonna matter. But anyway, let's see what we get. All right, now, so I show you guys everything that I'm using here, where I keep my beans, how I use the machine, how I weigh everything out, my grinder. I talk about all of that on the other video, so just watch the other video if you want to get some insight on all of that. But let's just pull a shot and let's make some Café Cubano. Okay, I already have some beans in here. Again, medium to dark roast is what you want, and that's what this is. Okay, I'm weighing it out. I'm gonna go with 17 grams. Okay, 17.2 grams. A lot of people say that 18 grams is perfect for this machine. And again, something that I try to explain on the other video is that it may be so in some, depending on the roast, depending on how oily the coffee is, and then depending on a lot of things, that might be the case. 18 grams. So that might be the case. So 18 grams might be perfect in a lot of instances. Now with the coffees that I've been buying lately, I'm getting the best results with like 16 and a half, maybe 17 grams. Today I'm gonna go with 17 grams. We're gonna make some Cuban coffee. Okay, like I showed you guys in the previous video on coffee, I keep the grinder empty, so I weigh my beans before I put them in there. So whatever I put in is whatever I get out, and that's how I keep it constant. Okay, again, on the other video I showed you guys how I do my tamping and all of that. So again, this machine comes from factory, programmed to give you about 2 ounces of fluid out. Okay, so it'll give you 2 ounces of liquid. With our 17 grams of ground coffee, we'll have a ratio of somewhere around 3.5, 1 to 3.5. And that's what we're gonna go with. I believe 1 to 3 is called a long shot. I think they call that a long shot. But, and again, in some techniques from country to country it varies. People like different things. Espresso still goes up from there. In some places they'll make it ratio of 1 to 4, maybe even a little more than that. Now after that, it's already like a little bit too diluted to maybe even, call it regular espresso. All right, now we're gonna brew into here, and there's a reason for that. I'll get into that in just a second. Let me see if I can get you guys a close-up of this. You can see the pressure there. It was just right, just the way we want it. You can see the crema. We got plenty of foam. Those fine little bubbles that make drinking espresso so pleasurable. All right, now so let's turn this into what we would call Cuban coffee. Now I'm gonna taste it like this. Let's do that. Let's taste it. But man, I'm telling you, this is not Cuban coffee. There's no way anyone in the world can tell me that this is Cuban coffee. Now, it doesn't have the lethal dose of sugar, but even if I were to put that in, there's no way. So I'm just gonna sample this. Got a little bit in here. Yeah, no way. This is like way too strong. Now, people that are used to this, I could see myself getting used to this. It's great. I mean, the flavor's there. I mean, it's awesome, but it's not Cuban coffee. All right, here we go. I know I could empty the portafilter out and just get the water so that maybe I don't over extract this. But man, like I said, it's not that serious. All right, let's just get on with life. As you can see, let me show you guys this. If you could tell, let me see if I could zoom in. Okay, if you can tell, we have 4 ounces. You see, the machine is, again, it's just right from factory. You'll get 2 ounces every time. And now we're at 4 ounces. So this should be diluted to about the strength of Cuban coffee. And this is pretty much how they do it in any coffee shop. They just keep running the machine until they basically, whoa, I'm still zoomed in. until they basically, you know, fill up one of these things. Okay, so now we've brewed our coffee. So we brewed our coffee. We have our espresso here. It's you know, it's a little bit diluted, but this would be like Cuban coffee. It still looks very nice. I'm gonna taste it just like this before the sugar. Salud. Okay, you see, we're there. We're right around there. All it's missing is the lethal dose of sugar. All right, now I'm using brown sugar because that's what my wife bought, but you'll never see this in any cafeteria in town. They'll just use plain white sugar. But anyway, it should work the same. Now I'm gonna show you guys the key here, okay? This is one of the keys. Now, if you go to Grandmama in Cuba, she's gonna bust out like one of those coffee makers like I showed you before. She's gonna get a little bit of coffee and put it in the sugar first. That's the first step. You just, a few drops, okay? And you wet the sugar, okay? So after you have a little bit of coffee in the sugar, you don't wanna overdo it because you won't be able to build a foam, okay? So now you start stirring this stuff up. Okay, a few minutes later, I think I have it to the point where it's supposed to be. We're gonna add the rest of the coffee. Okay, it's in there. So it's espresso, a little bit more diluted than normal, with a lot of sugar. So it has 3 teaspoons in there. Now what that does, what happens is when you put the little bit of coffee in the sugar and then stir it up like that, it will create more foam. Okay, so it'll create more foam, and you know, if you make the coffee in one of these coffee makers like they would do anywhere in Cuba, it usually that you don't get a lot of foam out of that. You don't get a lot of what they call crema. So this kind of machine does give you some. So if you go to a coffee shop here in Miami, they wouldn't do this part of the process, but at home, brewing in something that you don't get a lot of crema, you might want to go ahead and stir the sugar like I just showed you, and then you'll get at least some foam. And we'll try this out in a minute. Okay, so now we have our Café Cubano. All right, that's your basic Cuban coffee. That's what it is. I think I overdid it on the sugar a little bit. At least for my taste. I just don't like it that sweet, but for some people this would be perfect. Maybe I'll buy one of these little Cuban coffee makers, little espresso makers, and try using that next time. But watch the other video, the tutorial I have on making espresso and using the brew infuser, and I'll see you guys next week. Alright guys, so I'm still here in the kitchen experimenting. Believe it or not, this was the very first time I've tried making Cuban coffee here in my coffee maker here at home, because what I always make is regular espresso, and again it's like a 1-to-3 ratio. That's what this machine gives you. And I make my flat whites, or I make my cappuccinos, and those are the afternoon brews that I always post online on my Instagram. By the way, if you're not following me on Instagram, please do so. So maybe we can talk more about this. Send me a DM. But anyway guys, I kept experimenting to dial it in just the way that the flavor that I'm used to, okay? And what ended up being is the same amount of coffee. I kept using my 17 grams, and but I went to 3 ounces, okay? 3 ounces, 4 ounces, it was a little bit too watery, at least from what I was getting here on the brew infuser. So at 3 ounces of liquid, that's where I got right to the sweet spot. And the sugar, for my taste, man, I had to cut it back to half. I put 1.5 teaspoons into 3 ounces of the espresso. So it's a little bit more watered down than what I would normally make for my cappuccinos or flat whites. And now it's perfected. So if you have one of these machines, I would say you start there. Okay, so brew yourself a double, you'll get 2 ounces, and then hit it again, and when it gets to 3 ounces, if you use one of those measuring cups like I did in the beginning, you'll be able to just hit the button again and it'll stop. So get it to 3 ounces and do 1.5 teaspoons of sugar, okay? And that is your Café Cubano that you will get anywhere here, your cafecito that you can order anywhere here in town. All right, guys? So anyway, I hope that this helps. Send me a DM if you want more info on the subject, and I'll see you guys next week.